The historic drought across the West is already impacting the agricultural industry. Farmers in parts of New Mexico say they are being asked not to water their crops. In California, officials want farmers to plant crops that use less water. And cattle ranchers across the U.S. are selling off herds because they cannot afford to feed them, if they can find feed at all. To talk more about this is Jack Scoville. He is the vice president of Price Futures Group. He's also the author of Morning Grains and Softs Report. Jack, thanks for being here. Scientists say that the ongoing drought will be the worst the U.S. has seen in decades. How's the agricultural industry adapting?
Well, we have our crops planted. We're hoping for the best. Right now, prices have moved sharply higher to reflect the threat of hotter and drier weather. And it has been hotter and drier in some parts of the U.S. already. Western, Midwest, northern Great Plains especially have been dry, and the crops up there have been impacted. Agriculture is also adapting by selling off, as you noted, some of the cattle and hog herds. That's kept prices temporarily depressed for beef, or for cattle and for hogs, not necessarily beef, but that's a different thing altogether. And then when it comes to fruit and vegetables, so much of it is grown out in California, where the drought is very, very severe. And I think we're looking at some higher prices coming to our food stores soon because of that.
Well, as we mentioned, farmers are being asked to stop watering crops or plant crops that use less water. What does this mean for food supplies? And as you mentioned, prices are expected to increase by how much?
Well, it really depends on how severe the drought becomes and how severe the losses become. It's really impossible to predict an absolute high right now, but we're already pretty high priced in a lot of areas. Corn and soybeans prices have been very, very high. And I think some of the fruit and vegetable prices have been increasing as well. Exactly what's going to happen really depends on the severity of the drought. And nobody can really tell you that right now, so I can't really give you an absolute price prediction, but I can tell you that I think prices will stay higher. I think we will see, if the drought looks like it's going to become, a multi-year thing, then we'll see a lot of crop shifting. But for this year, I think farmers pretty much are stuck with what they have in the ground already.
Well, speaking of the potential for it to continue, I'm wondering, what does all this mean for farmers and ranchers and their ability to run a farm and actually employ people?
Well, the farm is still there. The farmer is going to do the best he possibly can. As it becomes evident that he probably doesn't need quite so many people on the farm helping him, then he's probably likely to let a few people go. But for right now, you're still hoping for the best, so you're likely to keep those people on for another month or so, and then we'll see where we're at then. There's still we're really just done planting with a lot of the corn and soybeans, and the development is just starting. So there's still plenty of time for rains to fall and for us to have big crops. And so it's a very uncertain time in the futures market, and a very uncertain time out in the countryside, because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen next.
Jack, I'm wondering if we should be concerned about food shortages.
Not right now. I don't think you have to be. In fact, as I mentioned, I think you'll see influx of beef and pork into the marketplace because the herd sizes are going to be liquidated somewhat. I also don't think that food shortages are going to be a huge issue, a long-term issue, unless the drought becomes long-term. We can see some spot shortages of some goods, but we also import a lot of food as well and things like that. So there are plenty of other places to get our food. It's easiest and cheapest from California or from Florida in the case of fruit and vegetables, but we also import from Mexico, for example, from South America, and those imports can go up. So I think food supplies can get tight. I don't know that we're going to have any lasting shortages unless, as I say, this drought really continues for more than just this summer.
Well, that's at least some measure of good news. But obviously, none of this is happening in a vacuum. Jack, as you're looking at the futures, I'm wondering how climate change has been impacting the global agricultural trade, and how will it change the agricultural industry in the years ahead?
That's an excellent question, and one that'll take quite a while to answer. But it is impacting. It is impacting the global food supply, and I think it will continue to have a pretty severe impact. If we're in a warming situation, for example, crop areas will shift farther north. If we get into a cooling situation, which is possible, then crop areas would have to shift farther south, or we'll have to grow shorter-term variety crops, which yield less. So we're looking at, and either way, the uncertainty in production, even though we do have a lot of really genetically fantastic modifications out there for seed, just the fact that we can't predict how the summer is going to go will probably cause us to use some to plant some seed that maybe won't perform quite as well, and that's just the way life is. And so as the climate changes and as it becomes less predictable, the science involved in making the seed will have to become that much better to try and keep the yields up, really. And I think on a year-to-year basis, it's going to be very hard. So I think we're looking at the possibility of less production overall, and a lot because of just the uncertainty of the weather and and the extremes that the weather has gone to lately and is likely to achieve in the future.
Jack Scoville, thank you.